Well, hi there, Team Healthy. So good to be with you here today. I've got Wednesday, December 1st here, so we're starting the last month of the calendar, and uh, glad to be in the holiday season now. Those of you who are away from the United States and New Zealand and Russia, I see, and other parts of the globe, you may not celebrate Thanksgiving in the same way that we do, but that starts off our holiday season, and so we're kind of getting in that kind of mode. Just so pleased to have you here. We've got a whole lot of questions here today, and I'm going to just let you know, I've said this many times before. I consider it an honor that you allow me to be a part of your journey. And what I do for those of you who are new, I collect questions through the week. And you can leave them. You can either leave them in the chat bar on the side here, or afterwards you can leave them in the comments section below the video that will be posted. And then also sometimes I pick up on some questions that come through on other videos. And then every Wednesday, midweek with Dr. C at 11 o'clock Central Time US, then I go through some of the questions that have come in. So I want to just dive right in with you and see what we have. I'm going to go ahead and pick up on a question that was left right here at the top just before we went on here, and it's from Alex, and you can see some of his thread there in the chat section over off to the side. Alex talks about how he was 8 years old when his parents split, and during that time, he didn't mention siblings, and so I don't know if he was an only child, but his father actively trained him to try to hate the mother. And then, unfortunately, the mother became physically abusive toward him. And now during his childhood, now here he is as an adult, and he's gone no contact with both of them. And he's expressing that he feels guilt. And by the way, I see that many of you, or several of you, have expressed words of affirmation to Alex. And Alex, I know you're listening right now. Our hearts go out to you. I had a buddy who wrote a book, and the book is out of print now. A guy named Paul Warren, and he's an old friend of mine. He died actually of a heart attack a few years back. He was a adolescent psychiatrist, and he wrote a book called "Kids Who Carry Our Pain." And the title alone speaks so strongly. Kids who carry our pain. There are times, Alex, when mom and dad can have this real strong need for control. And obviously, they were unable to manage their lives together, because I strongly suspect, based on what you mentioned, that it was just nothing but an emotional tug of war. And you were the one that was caught right in the middle. And so they would play out their pathology onto you. And it's to me, the parental alienation is one of the most insidious ways that narcissists can play out their pathology. They actually can teach their children to have the same amount of hate that they have. And in mom's case, she had a lot of unresolved issues with dad. And so instead of taking it out on him, although who knows what she did there, she took it out on you. And there you are, you're a little 8-year-old kid, and you're thinking, all I did was show up. And then we've got the Hatfields and McCoys here going after it with one another. What did I do? For you as an adult to conclude, this isn't working for me. This is not normal. This is not reasonable. I shouldn't have to be putting up with this. That's the right conclusion. It's sad and it's tragic that they were unable to get their act together enough to go into that loving space with you. But guilt implies that you have something to be guilty about. You have something blameworthy to be guilty about. And for you to say, well, I have to carry the shame, the pain that they were unable to come to terms with, that's not on you. And so let's keep in mind that narcissists can play their garbage out on other people's agenda, but ultimately each individual is responsible for who they are. And the fact that you said, I'm pulling away from this dysfunction, that's pretty normal. So hold tight, Alex. Know that we have a team here that's wanting you to stay with us on Team Healthy, and I hope that as you continue every day, every week, every month, every year down the road, that you're going to decide, I'm going to take the experiences that I've had and use it as a springboard for me to be the much healthier alternative. Watch and see how it works. And if you need some therapy with people that can assist you along the way, or support groups, things like that, I would all the more encourage that as well. So that's a good one to get started with. Now, I've entitled today's question and answer time as long-term exposure to narcissists, because so many of the questions that we have indicate that you're trying to come to terms with things like Alex has been doing, trying to come to terms with long-standing patterns there. Let's go to a second one, another question here. This person is responding to a comment that I made recently. She says, I was interested to hear you say your best thinking doesn't happen until you're 40. And I see many people on Team Healthy ask if narcissists get worse as they age. Presumably, narcissists never reach the best thinking phase, being stuck in their infantile behaviors. I wonder if healthy individuals who continue to gain wisdom and values with age inevitably sense an ever widening gap between their maturity levels, which also increases the perception that the narcissist gets worse with age. And the answer is yes. I've been asked, do narcissists get worse with age? And actually, we can say that it's a mixed answer. There are some studies that could imply that over time, some individuals who might have had an earlier history of being very controlling and selfish, they may mellow a bit as the aging process goes into effect. And usually these are individuals whose narcissism may not be all the way down to the far end of the spectrum, down where the malignant narcissism is. And you've heard me use percentage terms. Maybe they're at the 50 or 60% level, and they can modulate it and they can improve. You've heard the old saying, experience teaches. And sometimes people can think, I can do better. And they make some adjustments. Many, though, once they get into the adult years and the patterns become more and more entrenched, they just double down. I've had so many stories about people who are dealing with individuals in their 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and even beyond, where it's like, it doesn't quit. And so typically, the first couple of decades of your adulthood, you are in that learning mode and you're trying to figure out the who am I. The deeper you go into the middle age years and beyond, you get into what's called the legacy building mode of personal development. And you're asking the question, how do I want to be known in the long run? What are the primary ingredients that I want people to think about when they think about me? Narcissists tend not to bring a lot of intuitive, insightful, penetrating kinds of reflection to the equation. They just tend to be black and white, and they're very externally based in the way that they manage life. And as a result, they don't have a lot of introspection. And so there are plenty of times when they'll just stay stuck, or they'll double down and get worse. If you have a non-narcissistic bent in general, the good news is the longer you age, then sure enough, that intuitive thinking can take over, and you have a much deepening sense of meaning and purpose in your life. And so, yes, there definitely tends to be a distinction between the non-narcissist and the narcissistic individual, and it's a phenomenon I've literally seen my entire life. I wonder how many of you have had situations where, let's say, you're 60 years old, and then the final parent has died, and then there's this big huge melee that goes along with the reading of the will and all of that. And I've heard so many stories along this line. It's like, come on, you're 60 years old. At some point, aren't you going to get beyond this? And with some people, it's like, no, I'm still going to be as cantankerous as ever. And so that's the way they operate. Another question we have here. This person says, Dr. C, could you help me understand why a narcissist that makes it clear that they hate you would go on to spy and follow you on social media? And they did so on the quiet for years, unbeknownst to me. Why would someone do that? Okay, so you have someone here that you've finally figured out. They pick up on comments that you may have made on Instagram or Facebook or some of the other medias that are out there, and then they wind up picking up information on you, and then they use it against you. And then it specifically says, and it's very clear that they hate you. Let's keep in mind what feeds a narcissist's soul. Now, let's back up. If you're a healthy kind of person, what feeds you is good things. My wife and I, we retired here in Waco. We've been here permanently now since the end of March. We had some back and forth between Dallas and Waco. We're now in the presence on a very regular basis of our little 3.5-year-old granddaughter. And when we finish that, it's like, oh, that feeds my soul. Feeling like you can be a party to someone else's growth and maturation, and you share a very innocent kind of love. That gives me a real good sense of well-being. Crazy narcissists will think, well, what gives me well-being is finding out dirt on you. And they may superficially have those moments where they have, tender moments, but basically what feeds their soul is feeling superior, power, authority, and having dirt on you. And so when you say that this person follows you on media sites so that they can pick up on things, that's a major red flag that you have somebody who's drunk on power. And they think that power comes through finding out the scoop about you so that they can make themselves look better at your expense. It's like the bully on the playground. Let's keep in mind that narcissists are data gatherers. Over time, even if they seem to show an interest in you, you realize they're scoreboarding you. Okay, you did this right. You did these 3 things wrong. You have these qualities that people like, but I see all these others that people don't like. And so they think like that. And so they build their self-esteem at your expense. And so when you ask, why do they do that? What it will actually go back to that part about, when you're over 40, why do some people not change? These individuals don't have the introspective nature that's necessary to say, wait a minute, worth and value and meaning doesn't come via competition with others. Worth is something that's bigger than that. It's more intrinsic than that. And when you start talking about the deeper and more penetrating insights, they just kind of look at you like, huh? I actually had one woman who leaned into me one time when we were talking about some stuff, and she said, I'm not that deep. And she actually proved it through many different ways that she wasn't. They don't think things through. And so just know that that's what you're dealing with. And if they're trying to gather data, then so be it. The best argument you have there is to have good character. And frankly, speaking on a personal level, I don't share opinions or woes or anything like that on personal media because it's just too much of a marketplace, if you will, for that kind of competitive nature to unfold. I'm not going to be a party to that, so just know that, okay? All right, this next one, okay, it's gonna give us a new trait, a new terminology that we're going to use. This person says, "I have a comment more than a question," and then she says, her narcissistic ex would do what I call a honey routine. Okay, so that's our new term, honey routine. And you can tell that she's a little older. She says, as an example, he would go to my parents' house back in the day at the time to make a long distance phone call, and then the bill would come. Now we have cell phones, so we don't have to worry about it. So her ex would go to her parents' house and place a long distance phone call, and it might cost $3.18. And then the bill would come, and this was years ago, and I would ask him for the money. And he did this routine for everything. He would say things like, "You love me," or "You want me to, you want to have me," or "You like to do this or that for me," and it would go on and on. And my mother and I would give my father the money just to keep peace. I caught on and would not take it. He got mad, and they think that people owe them things because they are who they are. They do this. Do they do this? Do they think this will work all the time? The honey routine gets me going in the wrong direction. So you have somebody that likes to use people, and in the grand scheme of things, $3.18 back in the day for a long distance phone call is not a whole lot, but they're using you, and they're messing with you. They're playing games, and it's like, I got away with another one too. And so what this indicates is that this husband of hers was just looking for enablers. Hey, I want you to prop me up. I want you to be my flying monkey, and you just do what I want you to do. And then they even have this fantasy. You like being connected to me, don't you? You think I'm pretty cool, don't you? And I know that. So even though I may do some things that annoy you, in the end, you know that I'm a really cool person. And that's how they think, and that's the delusional and the non-insightful way that they go. And I'm hoping that there can be a time when you can just say, this woman came to the terms with, uh, I'm not doing that anymore. If you feel the need to build yourself up by expecting this favoritism, that you have this attitude of entitlement over petty little things, and then you make a game out of it. Speaking personally, I'm more than happy to be helpful, and I'm more than happy to be cooperative as long as I don't feel like I'm being played. And so this woman is doing the right thing. That his honey routine, as she calls it, has her going in the other direction. It's like, yeah, it needs to go in the other direction, doesn't it? No honey routine around here is going to work. If you're going to be nice for right reasons, not nice for seductive reasons or just because you're playing with me. That doesn't work, and you can see that one of this kind of falls in an oblique kind of way into the category of love bombing. If you do enough nice things for somebody, then that now they owe you, and you love me, don't you? And at some point, the answer is, well, I can honestly say I love because it's in my nature to love, but your routine is getting very old and I'm not playing it. So I applaud her for saying, I'm not doing that anymore. Okay. Um, this one, my narcissist totally disregards my boundaries. Sadly, I stay, making sure I'm not making decisions based on my emotions. How can I not be emotional when I feel dismissed? So this person is saying, I don't want to make a decision about apparently my marriage based on just raw emotion. But yeah, at the same time, I still have a lot of raw emotion. How can I make that go away? Well, you don't have to make your emotions go away. If you feel hurt, maybe it's there for a reason. One of the things that I constantly reference is the fact that pain exists for a positive reason. If you have a gash on your arm, the throb is your body's way of saying, "Hey, something's wrong here. Let's go get that. Let's take that. Let's take care of that." If you have a gash inside your spirit, if you have a gash emotionally and you feel hurt or disillusioned or futile or angry, listen to what your emotion is trying to tell you. It's not wrong to have the emotion. And so when you say, I don't want to base decisions on emotion, well, emotion is a part of the decision making process. It can be sometimes your warning signal that says there's something wrong here that needs to be addressed. Now, sure enough, having said that, we have emotion, but then we also have logic and reason. And so you do want to make decisions, particularly if it's one where you're either going to remove yourself or greatly adjust how you're going to respond to that person. You want to make it based on rationale, facts. And so, what I would encourage you to do is setting aside the emotion. What do the facts say? And if you can look back and see that he yells at me easily, he holds grudges, he's not coordinated at all, shows no interest in knowing me, can be very controlling and overbearing, all of those narcissistic characteristics. The facts say that's not what people on Team Healthy do. That's inappropriate, and I do not have to subject myself to that. And so the emotion is there as a signal. And then what I would say is then also ask, well, what does my rational mind say? And if there's a match there, then it's time for you to move on and make some adjustments so that your emotions can modulate. And just as an aside, I would encourage you to make sure that this person generating all of this emotion in you is not the dominant individual in your life. I hope that you have people that know you and love you and coordinate well with you, and they affirm you, and that can give you a great deal of respite and peace. So make sure that you're exposing yourself to that element as well. Okay. Um, the next one, this one is somewhat similar. And this kind of goes with our theme, long-term exposure to narcissists. I would love to know why my ex-husband was so lovely at times, enough to keep me in for longer. But if I dared to differ in opinion or ask for something, he would go into what, and it says in quotation marks, blind red rage, only to me. Well, one of the tactics that narcissists have is that they like to be friendly with the proviso that now you're on the hook with me. So they may give you roses, or they may help you out with a task, or they may do you a favor, or they may say something nice about you in public. And you're thinking, wow, that's really nice. And then behind the scenes, when you do something that's not on their agenda, this blind red rage shows up. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? And that anger, we talk about how emotions can communicate. That anger is their way of saying, you have not gotten the memo, have you? It's all about me all the time. And so it illustrates that even the kindness or the friendliness or the pleasantness that they might display is part of the false self. That's what they're known for. And so it's really sad to think, do I have to be that hard edged when I deal with these people, to think, well, maybe if they're friendly, there's a hook on the backside. But with some people, it's like, hard edged or not, it's true. That's the way some people are. And so, that being the case, you have to come to terms with that. And so, there are many times when a narcissist can be friendly and helpful, but then it's nothing more than a means to an end. And it's part of their exploitiveness, it's part of their manipulation, and it's part of their phoniness that they live with. And it's definitely a form of dishonesty. I've had multiple videos where I talk about how narcissists want you to trust them. And so their friendliness is their way of saying, yeah, you can trust me until you can't. And so you can tell a lot about a person and their predisposition or not toward narcissism by watching how they manage disappointments or conflicts. And if they can do so in a reasonable kind of way and say, hey, let's talk, all right, you've got something good on your hands. But if they do so in a way that just comes down really hard and dismissive toward you, then unfortunately you have some pretty strong narcissism right there in front of you. Okay, uh, it's hard to think that a person's yes doesn't necessarily mean yes. That's kind of where we're going with that one. Um, this next question I get pretty much every week, and then this one has an extra angle to it. This person asked, does a narcissist know that they're a narcissist? And most of the times, the answer is not really. I mean, every now and then, I remember one guy sat in my office in front of me, said, "Well, I need to let you know that I'm a narcissist and a sociopath." And sure enough, as I learned about him, he was very accurate, and he went on to explain why his soon-to-be ex-wife was a miserable kind of person. And it's like, yeah, I know I probably created some of it, but I still can't live with her. And he was a miserable individual, and so at least on an intellectual basis, he acknowledged, yeah, I know I can be a jerk, so what? But he didn't do anything about it. Anyway, does a narcissist know that they're a narcissist? Sometimes, yes. More often than not, if you say, well, I hear a lot of narcissism going on there, they just think that you're using a dirty word, and it's like, you can't call me that. And so they just think of it as rather than taking the descriptive meaning of it, they just think that you're calling them an ugly name. And so it's like the kids on the playground. If you say you're a this, they come back and say, well, you're a that. It's just one-upmanship. But then that's that second question. Do they enjoy being a narcissist? And the answer is yeah, at some level. I think it was Freud, going way back, who's the one that came up with what we refer to as the pleasure principle. And the pleasure principle states that you do what you do because it gives you more pleasure than doing something else. I mean, and it sounds kind of strange, like if a person withdraws and goes into a deep shell of depression, you say, well, that's the pleasure principle. Well, in a illustration like that, basically they're saying I'd rather stay in a dark room and sulk than get out there with other individuals and just get it all worse. And so it's kind of a backwards kind of way, but we're driven by what makes us feel better. And in the best case scenario, love makes us feel better, and kindness and helpfulness and service makes us feel better. But for narcissists, it's like power makes me feel good. And being dominant and finding fault in you, I get off on that. And so, do they enjoy being a narcissist? Yeah, they enjoy the illusions that it allows them to live with. And keep in mind, they're constantly in alternate reality. They say to themselves, "Yeah, when you can squash people and when you invalidate and you're really skilled at being critical, you're on top of your game, aren't you?" And my thinking is, no. Let's remember, narcissism can be defined as the absence of love, and they don't get that. Being on top of your game means that you know how to love people well, and there's a patience and a goodness and a decency, and also assertiveness that goes with it. But narcissists, they enjoy temporarily the thrill, but long term, they have a long pattern of broken relationships and creating more distress. And so it's like I wouldn't put myself in that individual's shoes to save my life. So, but there it is. Another question here. This kind of goes to do they enjoy it or not? This person says, do narcissists ever feel regret about exploding in a wild rage and later on? And even if they don't say so, do they ever feel regret after having a wild rage? You're thinking too much like a normal person when you ask a question like that. Because normal people, if you slip up and you let yourself get hooked with inappropriate anger, you're going to feel a lot of regret. And it's like, I know that that can be on the inside of me. I don't like it when that happens. I don't like it when I allow myself to get hooked by somebody else's dysfunction, and it can put you into a funk. And you can think, this isn't working. I shouldn't have done it that way. And hopefully, with the guilt that might come with it, it becomes a restorative kind of response that you have. And so that's good. In fact, I'd rather feel guilty for something that I did wrong than have no guilt whatsoever. By the way, once the guilt has brought you into a place of restoration, you get to act like a forgiven person too. Let's keep that in mind. Narcissists, they're not going to feel guilt in the same way that healthy, normal individuals will feel guilt. And they might say, I regret that it didn't work out the way I wanted. And so they may have regret in a competitive kind of way. But then when you ask, well, tell me what it has done to you at the character level. What is it that you regret about that? You know what they'll do, don't you? They'll blame you. That's what you exist for. It's like, well, yeah, maybe we had a problem where there was some rejection going on here, but it's your fault. And so instead of taking responsibility, which is what you would like, it's like, well, I regret that it happened, but I also regret being in your presence. And I regret that you are what you are. And I regret that you made me miserable. I did a video a while back called, let's see, rejection trauma and the narcissist, I'm the victim response, something like that. And there can be a sense that you feel rejected, or a narcissist feels rejected, but then in the end it's like, yeah, and the reason I felt rejected is because I have to hang out with all sorts of losers, including you. So they tend not to have the right responsibility when they have their rages. Instead, they start looking around saying, okay, who's available that I can blame this on? Oh, you. And that's what you exist for. That's your role. and I'm hoping you're not going to step into that role anytime soon. Okay. Uh, Another person, and this one, I can just feel the futility that drives this question. This person says, "Will I ever be attracted to a non-narcissist? What can I change within me?" Now, when somebody asks me, a therapist, a question like that, it's like, this is why I'm glad I'm a therapist. What I'm hearing is a person that says, I need to take a hard look at who I am and how I get myself into situations that I really don't like. What can I learn? Man, that's the way to do it. And to the person that sent this question in, I want to give you a high five first just for asking a question like that. Will I ever be attracted to a non-narcissist? Well, first, by virtue of you asking this question, what can I change within me? You're showing some humility and you're showing a vulnerability. And it's like, if I'm looking for somebody to befriend or to connect with, that's a really good starting point. Oh, I see that there's a lack of that egotism and there's a willingness to be a responsible individual. I find that to be very appealing. Now, the question is, as you're moving forward after having had some broken relations with narcissists, are you adept enough in picking up on those kind of ingredients that you notice that? Many times when you're getting to know someone, they can try to give the impression that they're the nicest person you ever met. They're friendly, they're interested in you. But you need to learn all the little cues, keeping in mind that narcissists are controlling. They have little to no empathy. They're exploitive. See, I would start just tossing in some comments or questions that allow me to think: does this person have empathy? Not, I don't like the way people feel, but do they honestly have a true understanding of the individuals from their vantage point? And then does it lead to goodness and compassion and civility? Remember my mantra, Dr. C, DRC stands for dignity, respect, and civility. Do I see that on a real consistent basis? How do they treat family members? How do they treat people in public that they don't know well? I call them your shadow people. People that are behind the counter helping you out, or someone that you don't know well, and what you do with them seemingly has no particular meaning. When they're kind and pleasant and uplifting, that's a good sign. How do they manage themselves in conflict? And especially one of the things that I watch for as you move forward with people trying to figure out if this is a narcissist or non-narcissist, listen to the ways that they discuss their own personal disappointments. Narcissists are consummate blamers. Well, the reason I had that broken relationship, or the reason this business thing fell through, or the reason this person doesn't talk to me anymore, is because they're an idiot or they're manipulators, and they go deep into that kind of mode. Now, sure enough, it's okay to say that if it's true, but what I'm listening for is, okay, so what role did you play? And so when they can say, and I realized that it brought out this in me, or I could have responded better, or there were some things that I wish now that I would have listened to within myself. And sometimes I have these uncertainties or these insecurities, things like that. When they go into that space, as well as the talking about some of the frustration they have, then I'm impressed that they have that insight and that self-awareness to be able to do so. So will you ever be attracted to a non-narcissist? Uh, with your own insight into what you're watching for. And as you have that sense of calmness and that confidence from within, then I'm hoping that that's something that you can learn to pick up on in ways that you have not done so as successfully in the past. Okay. All right. Here's another one. Can covert narcissists become dangerous and violent? I'm guessing that I want to see what kind of responses we have here on our chat right here. Can covert narcissists become dangerous and violent? The answer is, are fish wet? Do bears live in the woods? Yeah. Let's keep in mind what narcissism is. Narcissism is all about being entitled, being self-absorbed so that they can rationalize their need to control other individuals and have dominance and superiority and invalidation. They build themselves upon someone else's flaws or weaknesses. It's a completely dysfunctional way of managing life, and the danger is that they elevate themselves by diminishing you. And so whether you're overt or whether you're covert, they have it in their minds, one way or the other. I want to make sure that I am on top, which means you're not. And if they have to smear your name, if they have to talk to you in derisive kinds of ways, or cut you out of favored positions and all like that, there's hardly anything that's beyond their capabilities. So yes, know that the more a person is a control driven, authoritarian, over opinionated, then at some point it's going to come against you, and you just have to have your boundaries up, recognizing I can't afford to let myself get too close or too connected to a person that has that, because at some point I'm going to be the next one. So please know that. All right, let's see. Let's make this the last question, okay? And this kind of goes to the older you get, then you begin to adjust. This person says, "Dear Dr. Carter, I've been depressed because I've noticed that I've lost some people since the relationship with my narcissist has ended. The best way I can describe it is that my tolerance for people overstepping my boundaries has lowered." Okay, good for you. In other words, you're learning. "And I don't have the stamina anymore to let so-called friends stomp on me. It saddens me because I'm losing people for being my true self and talking about things and feelings that are authentic to me. I'm not sure if I can be around friends who are forever superficial and in a rosy cloud, summoning rainbows and glossing over the dark clouds that also exist." And then this question: "Is loneliness part of the recovery, or am I doing something wrong?" I have a friend who has studied the Myers-Briggs temperament analysis test, and many of you are familiar with that. And he and I talk about this all, and he's a really smart guy. And he came up with a statistic that showed that he said about 27% of the population are intuitives. You have the one of the S versus the I. The S is sensory; they're very concrete, black and white, and intuitive. They're the analytical and thinking things through. He says probably about 27%, according to data that he had uncovered, are intuitives. In other words, they like to think things through. Here you have a person who says, as I've gone by in my life, I realize that I have not had really good boundaries, and people are very willing to step all over them. But as I age, then I've come to the determination that I need to firm up my boundaries. And by the way, boundaries is not just saying no. Boundaries means that you have a definition for yourself, and you're going to stay inside your definition, and you're not going to let other people define you. And you're not going to let them get away with trying to turn you into somebody that you're not. It's like, look, I know who I am, and I don't need to be the version that you say that I'm supposed to be. I'm certainly willing to receive input, but I need to be me. I'm not very good being someone else. And in her case here, she says, I find that some people might be offended by that. Now, on one hand, you want to be sure that you're not pushy, like, hey, nobody's going to tell me what to do. I mean, we don't want to go to the point to where you are abrasive in the way that you establish your boundaries. But there are times when you might say, in your mind, it's like, well, in the past, I would say yes, but right now, that's a no. And some people may not understand, or in the past, you might have been the go along to get along person. And then right now, you're thinking, when I go along to get along, sometimes people put their pathology on me, and I don't know that I need to do that. And so I'm hoping that as you go on and you have more of that sense of boundaries, there can be a sense that says, I like being more authentic. And then unfortunately, you begin finding not everybody, as they progress in their lives, have that same growth trajectory. They're still over there either insensitive or they have their control agenda or they're uncaring. And for you to say, maybe I used to put up with that kind of stuff, but it didn't serve me well. And self-preservation, by the way, is a good thing. It's not the same thing as selfishness. When you go into that self-preservation mode, I'm going to say one thing, and that is good for you. Now, is loneliness part of the recovery, or are you doing something wrong? Well, you may have heard the old saying, it's lonely at the top. Sometimes when you get to that higher order of reasoning, you look around thinking, who here wants to join me in this higher order of reasoning? And the answer is, well, not nearly as many people as I would wish. Now, I'm not going to say that you're uh, relegated to a completely alone kind of life, because there are some people that can go into that space with you, which is why I appreciate our team healthy here and us being able to share these questions. And this is why I like to do this format. So you can realize, I'm not alone. And so do seek out people that can go into that space of introspection, but know that at age 50 or 60 or 70, the number of people that can go into that deeper space may seem smaller than it did at age 22. But at age 22, you don't have the same kind of wisdom that you do in your middle age years and beyond. And so just know that it may narrow down your inner circle, but that's not the worst thing. And so go with that. Okay, now, as you know, I always leave questions on the table, and so what I'll do is I'm going to hold on to questions, and I'll pick up on what you send me this week. Um, Based on the questions we have here, I know that we have a lot of thinking people that are watching our channel here, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm glad to be a part of the stimulation that keeps you in that kind of introspective mode. I know some of you are in therapy, and some of you, this is your therapy. Either way, I think it's really good for you to have the ongoing practice of asking the who am I questions. And so we'll do it again next week, okay? And we'll keep doing it until we run out of questions. So we may be doing this for a while, okay? So thanks for your many comments here. Thanks for your encouragement to one another. Thanks for your encouragement toward me. And just know that I'm looking forward to our time next week. So, same time, same station. And I hope that the rest of this day goes well for you. Thanks for your participation. Bye, and I'll see you next time.